Hola, hola everyone.
Hello, hi.
Hi.
Welcome to the 2023 Latinx Kidlit Book Festival. Bienvenidos. Please
Woohoo.
read our anti-harassment policy in the chat box. And don't forget to subscribe to the Latinx Kidlit Book Festival YouTube channel. And if you're a school, a classroom, library, or educator joining us, our School Visit Fund is back. You can enter to win a free virtual visit from a Latinx author or illustrator for your classroom or library. You can find the link to the entry form in the chat. Okay, so now we're going to be introducing each other. My name is Ana Siqueira. I'm a children's book writer. I have some books published, like Abuela Super Capa, that I'm going to be reading today. If Your Babysitter is a Bruja, and Bella's Recipe for Success. I also have a graphic novel and a board book. And now I'm happy to pass the introduction to Jackie.
Hello, everybody. Bienvenidos a todos. I'm so happy to be here with all of you and my lovely panel. My name is Jackie Azúa Kramer, and I'm a picture book author. I'm coming to you from Long Island, New York. And I love to write stories that reflect what you see in your mirror and what you see outside your windows. I'm going to read for you today Manolo and the Unicorn, written by me and my son, Jonah Kramer, and illustrated by Zach Manbeck. I've written many books. One that just came out, I'm going to do a quick plug. Empanadas for Everyone. There are many more, but I just need to pass the torch on to our lovely Alyssa, who's going to introduce herself.
Thank you so much. Super excited to be here. The panel's appropriately named Joy. And I am going to be reading my first book, Plátanos Are Love. I'm going to read a little bit of it because it's a little bit of a longer text. I'm also the author of The Bronx is My Home, which comes out this October. And I am tuning in from Philadelphia, but many of you probably know me from the Bronx, so I'm always there too. If you're in the area, say hi. And I'm going to pass the mic off to Aixa.
Hi, bienvenidos. My name is Aixa Pérez-Prado. I'm from Argentina, and I'm the author and illustrator of City Feet, which is a rhyming picture book told from a toddler's point of view that only sees the legs and feet of cities around the world. And I also wrote this board book, Our World Argentina, that just came out in the Our World series, illustrated by Mariana Ruiz Johnson. So I hope you check that out. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the panel.
Okay, so now we're going to start our story time. And our first book is going to be Manolo and the Unicorn by Jackie.
Okay. All right, guys. So just quick, this story, as I said, was written by myself and my son, Jonah Kramer, inspired by something that happened to him. But basically, if you believe in magical creatures like mermaids and dragons and unicorns, this story might be for you. So here we go. Manolo and the Unicorn. To Manolo, the world was a magical place. On his way to school, Manolo caught lively ladybugs and counted their spots. He fed dandelions to a curious rabbit and stopped to listen to a chorus of noisy frogs. But he always looked out for the most magical creature of all, a unicorn, wild, graceful, and extraordinary. In a journal stuffed with sketches, scribbles, and samples, Manolo took note of any signs of a unicorn. He heard the school bell ring, slipped his magnifying glass in his pocket, and raced into class as his teacher made morning announcements. Tomorrow is the wild animal parade. Are we ready to share our favorite animal? Sounds from the wilderness filled the classroom. Roar, hiss, screech, chirp, snort, neigh. I'm going to be a koala. Peacocks are the prettiest. Lions are the strongest. I'm going to be a unicorn, Manolo said. Unicorns aren't real. Boys don't like unicorns. I do, he replied. Manolo's classmates snickered and ran off to play on the jungle gym, leaving him alone. Now the world felt ordinary. Maybe they're right, he said to the lonely ladybugs and the puzzled rabbit and the chorus of frogs, now sadly silent. Maybe unicorns aren't real. Then Manolo heard the sharp snap of a twig and the crunch of leaves. A unicorn, Manolo whispered. Manolo remembered what he read about unicorns and bowed his head. Manolo grabbed hold of the unicorn's mane and off they galloped deep into the forest. Woohoo! Wherever the unicorn went, the flowers opened wider, the trees stood taller, and the sun shone brighter. Manolo learned to gallop swiftly and gracefully with the unicorns, leap across lakes, and forage for wild nettle and mint. The unicorns welcomed Manolo as one of them. With a quick swish of the unicorn's tail, a shimmery strand as light as air and as strong as iron fell into his hand. Around a crackling fire, they feasted on wildflower honey, and the world was magical once again. Manolo looked up at the morning star and thought about home. He wanted to share this magic with everyone. The bright light of a new day woke Manolo. In his hand, he found the gift from the unicorn. He jumped out of bed and quickly began to cut, glue, and sew his costume. Do you need help, Manolo? No, thanks. I can do this. The day of the wild animal parade, the festive menagerie posed in their costumes. Manolo shook his silky mane. He swished his shimmery tail and bowed his head crowned with a shining horn. Tell us about unicorns, Manolo, his teacher said. Manolo's heart raced as he looked out at all the wild things. A unicorn will only reveal itself to those who are pure of heart. Unicorns live in a secret place by a waterfall, and one strand of a unicorn's tail is as strong as iron. Manolo's classmates stared in silence. Then one hand slowly stretched in the air. Are unicorns hard to find? Not if you know how to see them. Does a unicorn have special powers? I want to meet a unicorn. Can we go together? Soon the classroom echoed with chatter and laughter and oohs and ahs. So in the forest of wild animals led by a unicorn, the flowers opened wider, the trees stood taller, and the sun shone brighter. And so did Manolo. The end. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful
Thank
story.
you.
Love it.
Thank
Well,
you.
in between story time, we're gonna ask a few questions to each other. So our first question is, what inspired you to write your story, and why is this story important to you and maybe to all the kids and teachers and librarians listening to us? So let's start with Jackie since she just read her beautiful book.
Um, I mentioned earlier the story was inspired by an experience my son had as a child. Um, he's a young man now, and I just want to say that, this reflects that we are all storytellers. Um, he shared with me that when he was a little boy, and I didn't know this, that he was teased because he used a purple crayon. And he was like, wow, okay. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to use a purple crayon. And he is now navigating questions about his identity, like, what else am I not supposed to do? And I think the story brought out, and I think these are themes that I hope are important to you and inspire you, themes of inclusion and diversity, identity, and kindness. Um, all these things help to create community. All diversity and identity and recognizing, other people and who they are helps to create connections. And speaking of joy, that is how you create joy, by creating connections, by creating community. So I hope the story in some way inspires you and inspires you as storytellers, because you each definitely have stories within you that you could share. Just trust yourself.
I actually have a 4-year-old and she loves your book. And it was
Oh, thank
the
you.
timing in which it came out was perfect because she's obsessed with unicorns right now. So it was a more like it was a beautiful narrative of unicorns as opposed to like the more commercial like unicorn story. So I think the way that you did it was beautiful. And I think the way you infused those themes in there was beautiful. And similar to like you, I draw inspiration from personal experiences. Some of my favorite experiences were cooking with my abuela growing up. She has since passed, but I feel like whenever I'm in the kitchen, I get to bring her back. So it's perfect. I wrote about Plátanos Are Love and how much cooking with my grandmother meant to me, and also like the resilience of our ancestors. That's one of those like more subtle themes in there that I hope readers get to resonate with.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in to say I love the joy in that book. He just has so much joy in magic, and I think that's a very Latina perspective on life. We are allowed to believe in magic, I think, and children, as we all know, are much smarter than adults, and much more open-minded and creative. And the idea that we can all just be unicorns if we want to be, that's a beautiful notion. And as Alyssa said, it for me, I think it inspired by the diversity around me and my history as a traveler. I've been traveling my whole life. I'm a child immigrant, and I went back and forth, and I've lived in about 6 different countries. And so that inspired my book, City Feet, and it inspires me to look at all the magic that you can find in the world around you. And bring it into our stories as storytellers. Like Jackie said, everyone's a storyteller, and it's lovely when we can share that with all of you.
Yes. Oh, Jack, I had to tell you a story about a unicorn because my grandson, he's now 9, but he was probably around 6. I think all the kids have a story about unicorn, right? And he told his father, "Oh, I saw a unicorn yesterday." His father is kind of like, "No, I cannot lie, I cannot say things, even Santa Claus and all that kind." And then he said, "There's no unicorn." And then his friend said, "Yes, I saw the unicorn too." And they were both sleeping. And I was there and I said, "I saw it too." I know,
Yeah,
we all saw the unicorn. It was really
right, right.
but yes, my story
Yeah.
about a super kappa was inspired by my mom. My mom died in 2019, and it's a story about how my mom and my son used to play superheroes. They used to do superheroes the whole time, running around the house. She was Robin, he was Batman, and it was really a fun game. And in that story, the abuela gets sick, and Louis, that is the name of my son, has to deal, and he grieves because his abuela cannot be his sidekick anymore. So I think it's very important for us to talk about all different topics and themes like unicorns, fantasy, plátanos, city
Mhm.
feet, and also sometimes about grieving and illness and getting older and things like that. So yes, that was my inspiration for my story. As I think most of our stories always have a little bit of us inside the story. So if you are trying to write a story, always try to think about things that touch you, like made you really happy or really sad or really angry. And you can find very fun stories full of heart and humor sometimes too. So let's go to our second story with Alyssa.
Okay, we're gonna dive into Plátanos Are Love. En el mercado, Abuela says, Plátanos are love. I thought they were food, but Abuela says they feed us in more ways than one. When I get home, I follow Abuela into la cocina, where we cook creamy and rich mango y fufu for breakfast. Crack, crack! Abuela splits open plátanos verdes. She boils and mashes them with butter and salt. I top them off with cebollas rojas fritas that spell amor. Abuela, is this your mama's recipe? I ask. Sí, mi amor, Abuela says. And it will be la receta you'll teach tus hijos un día. Siempre recuerda, plátanos are part of our history, Abuela says. Recipes were passed down in secreto. Shh. Because our ancestors weren't allowed to leer, escribir, or dibujar like you do in your notebook. That's why Abuela knows every receta by heart. When I ask which recipe she learned first, Abuela says, salty and crispy tostones y patacones, mi favorito. They're my favorite too, so I pay special attention to the chop chop as Abuela slices the firm plátanos verdes. Pop, pop! We fry them until they look like the sunflowers in our jardín, golden yellow on the outside with black seeds en el centro. I sprinkle them with sea salt for lunch. Crunch, munch. When we share them con nuestra familia y amigos, Abuela says our ancestors planted semillas with the wish that one day future generations would come together para comerlos. I look around at mi familia grande and think their wish came true. Mi hermanita and I eat until we are full. But somehow, Abuela always makes enough, like magic. When she cracks and mashes creamy and rich mangú, chops and fries salty and crispy tostones, peels and sautés sweet and chewy maduros, she shares with everyone because plátanos son para compartir. I lick my lips and say, They are, Abuela. Plátanos are for sharing, just like stories. And here we have the last spread. We had Ismi and her sister. They're up to something special. Put it in the comments if you want to take a guess of what they're doing. And we can move on to the next spread. Abuela says plátanos are our past. I say plátanos are our present. And with this book, plátanos will always be in our future. And a fun thing about this picture is all of these pictures you see on the wall are actual pictures of me when I was a little girl and of
Oh,
Mario Rahman when she was a little girl. So the one right behind the Abuela and Esme in the ballerinas, that was actually on one of our birthdays, my birthday or her birthday. And we were dressed up like ballerinas. And so there's pictures of Maria, who's the amazing illustrator, and with her family, and pictures of my family, which is super cool. Because in our familia, plátanos are love.
oh, so beautiful, Alyssa. Love it. And now I'm gonna have to eat platanos today. So,
Plátanos
I'm
apparently
hungry.
us too, right?
yeah, we all have to eat some platanos today.
Oh my
Well,
God.
let's go to our second question. And I can see, Elisa, that you have a lot of joy writing the story. And I love the information about the pictures. So we know that writing sometimes can be tough because we have a lot of challenges. So can you tell me how do you overcome all those challenges with some joy? How do you put joy into your writing?
That's a great question. I think for me, whenever I write a book, um, I try to infuse my ancestors in there, and that was like a thread in the book. And my grandmother, despite all of the challenges that she had to go through, she was always such a happy person. And when people ask me like, how are you so like upbeat all the time and you don't drink coffee? I don't drink coffee. Well, they're just like, where do you like get all your energy from? And I was like, I don't know. And then as I got older, I'm like, I get it from my abuela, like I get my looks from my mama and I get my energy from my abuela. And so it was when I was writing it, I was trying to infuse as much of her as possible into the text, and it would have been a disservice if it wasn't rooted in joy.
Oh, thank you so
Yeah.
much. Aisha, what
Yeah.
about you?
I really I love that question, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking about the joy I get in illustrating, really, because as you showed, like the little hidden things in your illustration, I love hiding things in my illustration. And like, for example, in City Feet, I put everybody in my family in there, like they're, but caricatures of them with long legs and big feet. But every time there's a family member, I have a little heart somewhere hidden on their person. And I put in maps of all the places that I've loved or lived in. And there's a lot of like little secret messages. And to me, that really brings up the joy, not only in the language, also using rhythm and rhyme, I think is very joyful for me, but also like just having fun with the visual imagery and adding different layers is something that I really enjoy doing. What about you, Jackie, with your words and text?
Oh, well, in Manolo the Unicorn, it was just a joy writing the story with my son. We wrote it during the pandemic, and that was such a sad time. But it was, it really was inspirational seeing how he's an actor. I was once an actor, and how, the joy came and how our process of writing, right? So he would act out scenes, and it was a lot of fun to see that, like that scene where the unicorn bows and he bows. And it's funny, Alisa, you pointed that out, that we did a lot of research on the Renaissance period of how they saw unicorns, the real historical way. They truly believed there were unicorns, and that unicorns appeared to those who are pure of heart. And immediately I just thought, oh my God, my son's story where he's navigating questions about his identity. So there was so much joy in writing that. And Alisa, to echo back to your plátanos, my God, I love them salty and crispy.
Mm.
Oh, sometimes with a little vinagre, sometimes with a little mantequilla. It all depends. But I wrote a similar story, and what I want to say about joy is, you know, memories. The joy that I incorporate into my story comes from memories. Memories. You talk about your abuelita, me too, and growing up in Queens and shopping, food shopping with her in Queens, one of the most diverse, if not the most diverse county in the world. You you would go, and you know what I saw was that everybody had a cousin to the empanada. You know, they had pierogies, they had calzones, they had
Yeah.
samosas, they had, you know, mandu. And in that, food creates community, food creates joy, food creates connections, and that creates joy. Joy. So yeah, so that's how I incorporate memories. So that's why you're all storytellers. Anna?
Yes, me too. I always try to incorporate a lot of scenes and memories in my stories. Of course, I change. So I get like the story was about. At first, it was about my mom dying, but then the editor decided to say, "Oh, she's just gonna get sick." So I try to incorporate memories, but also more fun. So try to even add humor, add a scene. So you're gonna see, I'm gonna be reading the story. There will be a cat and a dog who they are the cupcake criminales. So I try to incorporate
Mhm.
some humor, even if the story is a serious story. I try to incorporate a lot of memories. And for me, my joy, Aisha and Alyssa are my critic partners. Jackie was my mentor. So
Mhm.
I try to incorporate joy also by sharing my stories with others before the book is published. For me, it's such a joy, like when one of my critique partners give me a suggestion that I'm like, oh, yes, that will make my story so much better. So share your stories when you're writing with your friends. They will give you ideas and make the story even more stronger. And that's for me
Mhm.
is a big joy. And then, of course, the joy of reading the stories for you, for all of you. That is a big joy that we have besides all the challenge. We have a lot of challenge. It's not easy, but it's fun. So
And
now
you
I'm gonna
have
read. Oh yes.
if you can, you have to get your hands on Anna's other books because Anna is funny. Whenever, like, I'm always
She is.
cracking up hysterically at Anna's.
Thanks.
I wish I was as funny as you. One day, I'm gonna learn.
Mhm.
I yes, I loved being her mentor because her stories were so funny, so hilarious. And can I just say one little thing about the joy and how I write stories too that are sensitive stories that deal with loss and grief, food insecurity and deportation, um, and other themes like that, homelessness. But I always want to leave the reader, I want to leave you with a sense of hope, with a sense of love and comfort. Comfort. I know that when it feels dark, with just somebody patting you on the back and telling you it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. So, there is joy, but there is also sadness. We can have both.
Mhm.
Okay. It is not. Oh, is my headphones okay? Can you hear okay? Okay. So I'm gonna be reading Abuela Super Capa. So Abuela Super Capa was written by me, illustrated by Elisa Chavari. She is an amazing illustrator. She got some awards and things. So it's very good. Okay. Saturday are superhero days for Abuela and me. Super hugs, check. Super shakes, clink. Super capas, ready. Let's save the world. Abuela's eyes shine like estrellas. Together we shout, Super Louis on the job! Sidekick Abuela is lista! We rescue citizens from danger. We catch cupcake criminales. We secure lost Capas from tiny intruders. No, Isabel, I say, you are too little. 6 days until sidekick Abuela is back. Five, four, three, two, one, and viva! It's superhero day again. I build our fuerte. Oh, sorry, I have a notification. I build our fuerte and even sprints invaders away with Super Abuela lavanda spray. But Abuela never comes. Abuela's not feeling well, Mommy says. She's at the hospital. We'll see her tomorrow, Papi says. Abuela needs my super hugs, I say. The next day, I'm ready to see Abuela. I climb on the bed and give her a super hug and powerful kisses. Abuela smiles. The tiny intruder hugs Abuela too. I don't say anything because maybe Abuela needs an extra hug today. After lots of hugs, kisses, and shakes, Abuela comes home to me. I fly to her arms. But Abuela is not superhero ready. Papi says she needs to rest. Rest? For how long? When can I have my sidekick back? Maybe I can speed up her recovery with my superpoderes. I light our superhero fuerte, wrap her in my super hugs, give her sips of our super shakes, and smooth her with power boosting kisses. I do everything superheroes do, but Abuela doesn't get better. She tries, but she doesn't look super. Hmm, my Kappa makes me stronger. Maybe that's what she needs. Luis, Abuela needs to hang up her Kappa, Mommy says. Keep it safe for me, Super Luis, Abuela whispers. My supervision goes cloudy. Mommy says even superhero cries sometimes. I lie down under our super fuerte. Isabel invades it. I let her stay this time. Mommy gives me super shake. It doesn't make me strong. Papi brings me my kappa. This kappa is broken. I throw it across the room. I need my sidekick. I need my abuela. She wraps me in a soft squeeze. I hug double tight for me and for her. Isabel dashes into the room. Abuela, the villains are trying to steal the super capas. I seize Abuela's capa, but when I hand it to her, she shakes her head. It's okay, Abuela, I say. Even if you can't be my sidekick, you always be my super Abuela. And then I see. Isabel is playing with my capa. No, Isabel. Abuela, I shine like estrellas, and I know just what to do. This capa is perfecta for you. I wrap my capa around Isabel. Then Abuela gently wraps her capa around me. Our eyes shine. Together we shout. Super Louis on the job. Sidekick Isabel is ready. Lista. Vámonos. And here we have a glossary, and you see the cupcake criminales here back again. And I love that she put the boy with the Brazilian jersey because I am from Brazil. So the illustrator did that for me. So that is Abuela Supercapa. So we already talked. Gracias. Sorry that my headphone is a new headphone and I have a really hard time with it.
Mhm.
So if anything is bad, let me know. So we're gonna go to our next question, and I think we already talked a little bit about that, but how does your story reflect your personal experience, your culture experience? What can you tell about your stories? So let's see who wants to start.
Why don't you start, Anna? since you just read your
Okay.
story.
Okay, so as I said, this was based on my personal story with my mom. My mom really played superhero with my son, and he's my younger son, the youngest one. And I was trying to write Aisha knows. I tried to write that story so many times. It was one of my first stories, and I tried to write with a boy in Peru. It had a penguin. It was completely different, and I was super stuck on this story because I love it, but I couldn't really transmit what I wanted about grieving, about losing someone, and only clicked on my head when my mom died. And that's when I said, oh my gosh, I have to write my own story. I was trying to write a story that was not related to my personal experience. It was even like because I love Peru and I love penguins. So I wanted to write about a penguin in Peru. So I should know. I wrote probably 1,000 versions of the story. So it really got transformed and got like the way it is now when I realized I had to tell my own story, my own experience. When I really felt, because that was very special for me, because I really could feel my mom back there in this book and remember all the things that she used to do with my son. So it's so special if you put your experience in your book, your culture, your everything that you went through, your family, your memories, always gonna make your story stronger. It doesn't have to be 100% like a a biography or a memoir, but if you really base your story on your own feelings and your own experience, it's always gonna be stronger.
I agree. And I loved all the versions that you had before as well, Anna. And yeah, I remember that. And I think that it's so special that you are able to integrate your personal story into the story that eventually found a publisher. I have many personal stories so far. They're just sitting in my computer. But I always put something of myself in every story. And I think we all do. It's almost impossible, I think, to write without putting something of yourself into a story, and something of my kid's self. And for me, it's just sort of the quirkiness or the idea that we can find joy even in really sad moments. And, when we look back, because I was very close with my abuela as well, I think we all have something about our abuelas or our moms that we want to preserve forever. And the laughter is something that I really remember when I think of memories with my mother who's passed away. I love to remember when I made her laugh. And I love to remember when, as a family, we found joy in sometimes the silliest things, even during sad moments. So I think that the way we're writing, mixing what really happens with fantasy is really an important thing to do, because life isn't all a bowl of cherries, and it's also not all terrible.
Yeah, I want to jump in to echo that. A story that's coming out in 24. It's called "I Am Salsa" because I like to salsa. But that was written inspired by very awkward, kind of sad feelings that I had. Watching my parents, who every weekend pretty much had a party at the house, where I'd be like, ah. And my sister, my older sister, I remember her. Oh my God, she was, 4 years older, and she knew how to salsa, and she would get up, and at Spanish parties, Latinx parties, people move. They dance and they eat and they talk and they love, but they dance. I didn't know how to dance, and you're expected to. So they would put their hand out to me like this, like, little one, come and dance. And I'd put my head down and be like, oh, no, I can't do this. And, and I would run up the stairs and be like, I can't wait for this party to be over. So that came from a kind of an awkward, sad memory, but turned into a positive one when my father took me by and he said, I'm going to tell you something about this music. This music is so loud. This good. And basically, he shared with me all the instruments. He told me all this music that you're listening, the congas, the maracas, the guiro, the clave, the trumpets. He said, listen to all that, and where all that came, that influence from all over the world creates that salsa music. And all of a sudden, I started to move, and whatever I did was okay. And I realized it doesn't matter if I don't have the steps right. There you go. So that, came from a sort of awkward, sad moment, but became joyous.
Yeah, I infuse my culture in everything that I write. I don't know how, like, even if I tried not to do it, I don't think I could do that successfully. For Plátanos Are Love, it was written in Spanglish, and it was written in Spanglish from the beginning, but I wasn't sure how editors were going to react to that. So to kind of answer one of the audience questions, like how long did it take you to write the book? I wrote Plátanos Are Love within a couple of months, and then shared it with critique partners that gave me feedback. And it was interesting to get their feedback because, a lot of them who share our background were like, I love the Spanglish. I love the Spanglish. I love the Spanglish. And it helped me feel empowered to go on submission and share my book to editors, hopefully knowing that it'll find the right editor. And fortunately it did. And my editor actually said, I want more Spanglish. And that's just how I talked growing up. Spanish is my first language, but then when I started going to school, everything was in English. So at home, I talked in Spanglish, and it came very naturally to me. So it made sense to infuse my culture that way into the book. And I wasn't 100% sure how that was going to go, but fortunately it worked out well. And it's one of the first things that people say whenever I read the book. They're like, I love the Spanglish. I love the Spanglish. So any way that you can infuse your culture in your books is super cool. And I did it in my second book as well. The Bronx is my home. Growing up in the Bronx, I highlight the food and the culture and the places from a very like Latino perspective. The main character, Santiago, is Puerto Riqueño. He's Puerto Rican. And so I make sure that the things that he draws connections to and parallels his experience to are rooted in that Puerto Rican experience. And I'm Dominican and Puerto Rican. So that's always sprinkled in all of my books.
Okay, well, thank you for all your input. Now we are ready for Aisha's story, and that's going to be you're going to have to beat, maybe you can clap or beat or snap. I don't know. Aisha will tell you because it's a very rhythm, and you have to go with the flow.
Yeah. So I'm going to do a very quick read of my story the way I like to do it. And it is a story with a beat. So I'm going to do a snap clap pattern. So if you want to follow along, you can do that. So this is the cover City Feet and the end pages. So we're not snapping or clapping yet. We can go on to, there's the title page, and then it starts. Are you ready? Try to do it with me if you can. City feet, see them walking down the street. There go sneakers clean and new. Here come loafers, dusty blue. Slipper feet, chipper feet, see them shuffling down the street. Buenos dias, sac passe, guten tag, salam, good day. Giggly feet, wiggly feet, see them bouncing down the street. Sliding by on skateboard wheels, slipping on banana peels. Hairy feet, scary feet, see them creeping down the street. Noisy flip-flop flapping by, strappy sandal, heel so high. Snazzy feet, jazzy feet, see them gliding down the street. Waiting for the bus in groups at the playground shooting hoops. Funny feet, bunny feet, see them hopping down the street. Crossing bridges, how are you? Crossing roads, I'm fine, ¿y tú? Stinky feet, pinky feet, see them running down the street. Thank you very much, merci, playing hopscotch, 1, 2, 3. Dancing feet, prancing feet, see them swinging down the street. Off to work and school and play, rapping, tapping through the day. Silly feet, chilly feet, see them springing down the street. standing still to wait in line, stopping short to read a sign. Stubby feet, grubby feet, see them stomping down the street, in the sunshine, in the rain, on the bus and on the train. Tickly feet, quickly feet, see them skipping down the street, buzzing by like bumblebees, jumping puddles, climbing trees. Soccer feet, rocker feet, see them stopping down the street. Boa tarde, afternoon, agintuta, see you soon. Snoring feet, boring feet, see them dragging down the street. Gliding slowly, tiring fast, going home to rest at last. City feet, snoozing to the city beat. And that's it.
Wow, I love that book. And you read it so fast, but you have to get the book and look because she has a lot of uh, illustrations, a lot of maps and things that you can, it's like a treasure hunting. You have to be looking for different things that
Yeah,
you
it's
find.
fun. It's fun to do it fast, but it's not that easy, especially when you're turning the pages. But I like to keep the beat because that's really how I wrote it. I had this beat in my head, and that was what stuck in my head. And sometimes it's still stuck in my head, and it's hard to sleep because I'm thinking city feet, city feet.
Well, let's go for the questions and answers and see what they want to know about us.
So we have a question I saw, Anna. Did you see that? When did you start writing your books?
Now,
And
as she put a question right here now for you, Jackie, what was the process of creating the book with your son? From Evelyn.
oh, hi, Evelyn. Thank you for this great question. It was the process of writing it was basically I would um, write a section of the story. First, we discussed it, we chatted it out, we acted it out, so it was like a draft, but it was a discussion draft before it went on paper. Then, after I did that, then I would write something, and then I would send it to my son. We were in the same house, but didn't matter. I would send it to him, and he would open it up, and he would revise, change, and do whatever, send it back to me. I would accept changes or whatever, then I would move on. So it was like we broke it up into, um, so I see every book like a stage play. To me, it's like a movie, each page turn is a new scene, right? A new setting, new costumes, new characters, right? So we talked about it that way. So there was a lot of give and take, a lot of conversation, a lot of revising. You take out that pencil, you're erasing. Exactly. We were doing it on our computers. But yeah, so that was basically it. And then still came more revisions when I sent it off to my editor. The editor looks at it and they suggest some changes. But it was a very pleasant process. Writing with my son was a lot of fun, actually.
Nice.
Thank you for that question.
Ooh, the most difficult book you struggle to write. Thank you for this question. I think the hardest book for me is my third book that hasn't been released yet. It's called Gloriana Presente, and it's a first day of school book. And that one was the hardest to write because I think I was trying to accomplish a lot in it. It's a first day of school book, but there's so many first day of school books out there. So I wanted to make sure that this one was extra special and different. So I was incorporating a first day of school book, and then it's also mirroring the grandmother's immigration experience in a new country and kind of showing the challenges that they face to find their voice. And so there was a lot of big things happening, and to figure out a simple way of sharing all of that was very challenging, but fortunately, I had amazing critique partners that I shared it with and got a lot of really good feedback on how to accomplish that. And my editor was amazing in helping me do that as well. And I'm super excited for that book to come out. I think the hardest part is going to be reading it without sobbing now, because it's that one's a tearjerker, but like in a good way, you know, like it's like a good kind of cry. So I'm gonna have to practice reading that one out loud a lot so I can keep it together during school visits.
For me, it was this one that I just read because it was very personal. As I said, it was one of the first books that I was writing, and it was really hard to really get to the point where I said, okay, I'm happy with the story. Took me many, many versions and many help from my critique partners. And yeah, that was the one of the hardest. Even though I have one that is was harder, but not my fault. It was kind of my editor's fault because she kept changing and changing and changing. I'm not gonna say who's the editor, but you know, no, let's do this. No, let's change love to this. So it took me a long time to really get to the point that she said, okay, that's the version I like. But there are many challenges when you're writing. So make sure that you know it's not easy. It's a long process. You have to revise a lot, and you have to
Yeah.
sometimes
I
work in
think
many,
that's,
many ways.
yeah. And Anna, I want to jump in and say to all the budding writers and artists out there, revision is everything. You know, nobody writes a story that's perfect the first time or even good. Sometimes they're terrible. And then we
Most of the
rewrite it
time.
and rewrite it and rewrite it, and it gets better and better and better. And sometimes it goes off to, and it becomes a different story. So that's, I think, really important to writers. City Feet to me was super easy. I did it very quickly. It came like in my head like a song. And then my editor only asked me to add one spread. So that, like one page. So that was, it came to me pretty quickly. But another book I have that's coming out next year is much longer, and I've revised it, I don't know, 1 to 2 million times. I don't know how to count high enough to say how many times, but it's very hard because I have gotten feedback of add more information, but at the same time cut words. So it's hard to add information and take away words at the same time. So every book is different, and every book helps us learn, I think, how to be better writers.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How often do you write?
Yeah. How often do you write?
Oh gosh. Okay, so I am. This is going to probably kill all the writers out there, but I don't write every day. I don't. I'm one of those people that I have to have that little seed has to plant itself in my head, and it has to marinate in there. And that seed starts to grow. And it's while I'm washing dishes, while I'm taking a walk, while I'm, even, I'm in the shower, and it just needs to percolate. And as I say, I see it, like I see the beginning. When I have that beginning strong and that end strong, the middle sometimes is a little fuzzy.
Yeah.
But that's when I start to draft. But I have to have that sense of a strong beginning and an aha resolution. Like the ending makes you feel like, okay, that's how the problem was solved. Or that's, makes me feel something, right? But until then, sadly, I can't sit in front of the computer. I panic. I'm like, I don't know what to write about, you know? So, there's that. But whenever there's that question of what should I write about, because I get that question a lot from you guys. What should I write about? How do you know what to write? Where do your ideas come from? Like I said to you, you are a storyteller, a natural storyteller. The best stories come from your truth. Your truth. They're authentic, And just all you need to do is when you wake up in the morning and you smell the pancakes or you smell whatever it is, that's the beginning of a story, maybe. So, use your senses, trust yourself. Your truth is the best truth. And if you want to write every day in a journal, absolutely do that. I recommend it. But I'm being honest with you, I don't write every day. So I'll pass that on to somebody else who's more diligent about their writing.
I'm the same way. I don't write every day, but I do believe that there are other things that we can do to work on our craft when we're not writing. So if I'm not writing one day, I'm reading.
Yeah.
If I'm not
Always
reading,
read.
right? Like always reading. If I'm not writing something original, I'm editing, So it's like all of that is like part of the process. And sometimes if I'm not doing any of those things, if I'm not reading or writing, or I'm organizing a awesome school visit at a school, and that's a part of the craft because it's teaching me fun ways to make the reading and storytelling engaging. And sometimes I get other ideas for other things doing that. So sometimes focusing on the business part helps me with too.
Yeah. And it's you, Alyssa, Aixa, you with the interactive, the snap clap. That's such a wonderful thing to bring into the classroom, right?
That's a lot of fun. And also for me, I don't write every day. I write when I feel like it. I try to make myself feel like it sometimes when I'm on a deadline. But for me, being an illustrator, I just switched to drawing. And sometimes I'm just drawing silly things, but I think it's working on my craft, and looking at other illustrators, not only reading, but seeing other illustrations to me is very motivating. Like the illustrations in all of your books are very inspiring to me.
Right.
Okay, let's go to one more question. I think we have time for one or two more questions. Okay, I can start this one. So, Holland, if you want to be a writer or an illustrator, just practice. Don't, as we said, don't expect like your first story to be amazing. You will think so, because I remember that my first time I wrote some books in Brazil a long, long time ago. And when I decided to go back to writing, it was in 2019. And then I said, okay, I'm gonna send. I wrote a story, and I said, oh, this story is magnificent. And I sent the story to an editor that does those paid critiques, and I said, she's gonna love it. She's gonna buy my book right away. And then when the critique came, I was like, oh my gosh, I was devastated. She was very nice. She talked very nicely, but she told me all the problems that we had. So if you want to be a writer or illustrator, be ready to get a lot of critique, and some critics might be like, oh my gosh, seriously. Don't take anything personally. That's very important. Don't think like, oh, Alyssa told me that she doesn't like that sentence in my story. She might hate me, No, she's trying to help me. So always be open minded. Always be open minded. So if you want to be a writer or illustrator, you have to read a lot of books. If you like illustration, get a lot of books with a lot of art. See which one do you like, which styles do you like. When I was beginning to write, I would type the stories that I like the most. So that will give me a sense of the structure, how to work the story. But most important, read a lot, look at a lot of illustrations, and practice a lot. And don't expect you to be perfect the first time. Well, sometimes not even good, sometimes horrible. We have some names for the first draft. I'm not gonna say it, but it's basically like a horrible draft. So the first one, it might not be that great. So be always willing to get advice from other people, share with your friends, with your family, and read, 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 read a lot. Anybody else?
And even if the first draft is pretty bad, you always get something. There's always something that you can use in another draft and another draft and another draft. So I would echo everything Ana said, and also don't give up. Keep doing it. Keep writing and keep drawing if you love it. If you enjoy it, do it.
Yes. And I want to say that some of you storytellers out there are not, you are visual storytellers. So you like to draw. But in our world as picture book writers, we always, so here's a little tip, do think visually, right? How is this story in this moment? How is it filled with some kind of action? How is it active? How is it alive?
Mhm.
And doing that requires you to use your five senses, right? Your sight, your sound, hearing, taste, touch, all of that adds to delicious vocabulary, and a visual way to think. And only and for any kind of writing, if you're writing, but for in the beginning, for us, for picture books, we have to think in a visual way, right? Because that's what it is. So just for you illustrators out there, you might want to start with the picture first, not the word. Start with a picture, and then the word may come. The words may come.
And the last thing I will add is don't be afraid to ask for help, because I wanted to be an author since I was 7 years old, and then I did all these other things because I didn't know how to be an author, because I didn't see books like ours now out in the world, so I didn't think my stories mattered, right? So make sure that like, remember, if you take nothing else from this session, know that your stories matter. And then once you practice like Ana says, and you don't give up like Aixa says, make sure you ask for help along the way, because that is going to keep you motivated. You're going to need help with your manuscript, and then you're going to need help navigating the publishing industry if that is the route that you want to take.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I think we don't have time for any more questions. I'm sorry. So we're gonna wrap it up. We were very thankful for all of you here. Thank you for attending our Joy panel at the Latinx Kidlit Book Festival. Muchas gracias en nombre de todas nosotras. And I think that is it for today. Adiós.
Ciao.